Hello, welcome to the HolmFront. So this is the first time I've done a cold open this way.
And that's because we're going to watch Star Wars, the TV show.
There's a new TV show.
Oh, boy.
Yay. I Okay, so I'm going to give you what I know about it.
Okay. I
It-
know nothing. Zero.
So all I know is that Jude Law's in it.
Okay.
Hey, cool. The other thing is it is like a Goonies / Stranger Things attempt. So in the Star Wars universe, we're following a group of children on whatever this adventure tends to be. I want to know what you think about that.
This is going to be a crapshoot.
This can be a crapshoot.
We're back.
Whew.
We made it. We're alive, and that is a good thing, Tyler. There will be another day. A new day will rise, and you'll feel great again. I promise.
Okay.
It was bad.
Oof. Spoilers. So, oh my gosh. Okay. we just watched this. I don't know what to say. I don't even know, I don't even know how to start this.
Okay, I'll help you. So,
No more Star Wars. For the love of God. Whoever came up and was like, wouldn't it be cool if like Goonies, it was like a Goonies show at Star Wars?
No.
Fire that man. No more writing for you ever. And never write again. You need to go work at Walmart or something. This is a stupid idea.
I second this motion.
Stupid idea. It was like I knew it would be bad.
Yeah, from the premise alone, it sounded like a horrible idea. I was like, this is not going to blend well.
But I thought it would have a little charm. Something. Like Stranger
because it's
Things.
Star Wars? Is that why?
No, because like inherently that concept, E.T., Stranger Things.
Yeah.
What's the Abrams one? Like that
Super 8?
Super 8. Like that's the worst of the lot.
Yeah, it's awful.
But at least it has some charm. Like there's something good.
Yeah, a granule
something.
amount.
This had none of it.
Well, no, the Super 8 one, not to hang up on that, but the Super 8 one has a grain of salt, and it is one grain because it's at the end when the movie's over,
No.
and you get to see the movie that the kids filmed. That's funny. The rest of it was just like the kids were like mean and nasty and narcissistic.
But what I'm
and
saying,
like,
I'm saying is that one did have a modicum of charm.
Okay.
The Star Wars Skeleton Crew
Had none. Yeah, I know. It had none. It's the bottom of the barrel.
Nothing. Nothing.
Okay, let me just say this, though. If you are in a position where you got like a couple young kids and they want to watch, real young,
Like
and they just want some
5 or
Star Wars
6.
stuff,
Sure.
you'll probably think it's fine and passable. Like if you were a parent and you saw your kids watching that, would you be upset?
Yes. They're like, no, we're going to start you on quality.
I'd like to think that I'd be like, I don't want you watching garbage, and I would filter everything that they watch.
Yeah.
Be only good, supreme quality. Because there's so much media now, there's no excuse. But at the same time, I'd probably just be like, whatever. If they're enjoying it, I don't care. It's fine. It's not
clean.
It's clean. That's what I mean. It's clean. It's
It sucks.
exciting for kids. It has things in it that kids like.
I hope my kids would be smarter. But
yeah, mine are probably going to be erudite, like,
you're going to have them reading Lovecraft at like 2. But okay, so let's do this. Was there anything that you liked about it?
Well, if you give me like maybe a minute, I have to dig. Okay, I actually did like, but it's not for anything that the show really did. It's just my own personal feelings. But like, so they have this like suburban Star Wars environment, which is really unappealing for Star Wars, and it just like sucks all the fantasy Star Wars that you dream up in your head. It just like sucks all that right out. But at the same time, if I just stop thinking about Star Wars for a minute, I kind of like that aesthetic. Like I liked how the homes looked and everything.
Sure.
That's how like a futuristic like sci-fi reality. It actually looks cool. I'm like, that's like a place I'd want to be. It was very warm, kind of comforting suburban neighborhood.
Yeah.
I liked that. That's it. That's the thing I liked.
So if you could take a portion of the show and separate it from the show, then it's good.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
How about you? Give me one. You got one thing?
No. No. Good God, no. No.
Okay, so we have to
No.
explain. We have to explain
no.
so that they understand.
Okay.
So that they don't fall victim and have to watch it themselves. We gotta explain for them.
Don't do it.
I think to kind of kick things off though, what I said before, like it sucks the fantasy out of it. That's basically what it's done. Is just because like when you watch Star Wars, let's just go back to the fundamentals as we have to continuously do because that's the model. It's the reason why Star Wars was successful and that everyone loved it.
Every Star Wars film, it's like, let's go back to 77. I can't. You keep doing it wrong.
Back to the originals. So, the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Chewbacca, the reason why that is so beloved is A, it's a timeless story, and B, it's in a world that's so fundamentally unlike ours that it's pure escapism. And that's what everyone loves about that. And when you put us into a suburban neighborhood and make them like kids going to school and having to pass tests and being taught by freaking droids, it's going to be hard not to swear in this one.
Thank you.
Because I was swearing basically through the whole episode.
It was bad. Oh my gosh.
You ruin it when you do that. And the reason you ruin it is because, like, it makes it feel like those fantastical elements no longer exist. They're constantly harping up on the fact that, like, oh, like Jedis and stuff. Like, it's just a common thing that's like, no, that's for us to enjoy in real life.
Right.
It's for us to, like, on Christmas morning to, like, give your kid a lightsaber toy and then do a lightsaber duel with them in the backyard. That's for us. It's not for the show. You don't need to be reflective of what we do in real life. Nobody cares about that. That's our lived experience. It's like looking at a photo album. It's weird, and it's just unnecessary. So when you do a Star Wars show, it's a fantasy. You got to tell a fantasy like space opera. That's what you're doing. And they just did. That's not what the show is. So if you're that purist who thinks it needs to be the fantasy soap opera, you will hate this. If you're not and you're just like, whatever, then.
So I've been called an originalist with Star Wars.
There's like a term for it?
Apparently.
Jeez.
So because I have such a problem with everything that's come after the originals.
Because it sucks?
Well, it's because like, and here's the problem is that when you look at Lucas, he did those three and they're pretty revolutionary, even though they followed a basic hero's journey storyline. But they had everything going for him. You know what I mean? Like, I saw those when
That's why it worked. It was fundamental storytelling.
Right. When I saw those when I was a kid, when I was 8 or 7 or 8, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And like those, that's what fueled my imagination, period. Right? And it didn't have to be a kid on screen. It was something to which I could look forward to.
Yeah.
Like you said, like now I want to be a Jedi, or I want to be Luke Skywalker, or I want to be Han Solo, whatever. So, and then you watch stuff like E.T., and it's almost like, so Star Wars is trying to pull you into a fantasy world. Something like E.T. is trying to bring a fantasy world down to Earth, right?
Exactly.
Same thing with like Stranger Things.
Yeah. Either is fine, not together.
Well, yeah, that's what's so weird about this formula is that they put it in a fantasy world But then they try and make it like grounded so that he can go to have an adventure. And it's like, but he's already in a fantasy world because this is Star Wars.
Right.
So now you've like removed that element and then had to make it like relatable. And it's weird because like they live in suburbia. They go to a public school.
Yeah.
They have school buses. And the teachers are like these like robots. So it feels like Firefly, you know? Like kind of that real futuristic.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it goes through all of that, but then it just has these weird, like the best friend who's like this elephant kid.
The blue elephant guy.
He just looks whack. It's I don't
really
even know how to explain it.
There was one shot that was like 12 seconds long, and he's just like moving around, and it's like
and it's so unnatural.
Like, whoa,
and
what is going on?
It's odd looking,
weird, really, really weird.
But his trunk like hangs over his mouth, so you don't see his mouth most often.
Yeah,
and so it's real disconcerting when he's talking, and so it's just they're working with the trunk and like his giant eyes to try and purvey this emotion and stuff. But it doesn't quite come through properly. And then you have this plucky little arrogant girl who's like riding around the scooter. So she's supposed to be this like confident, cocky.
Yeah, she's like,
and she's just super off-putting and annoying the whole time.
And then she's like, sits down and she's like, so what are you in for? When
they're both in like detention. And she could, what are you in for? It's like, why are we using Earth terminology? Like, I understand there's a fine line. We're figuring out what is fine to use in universe that's going to disconnect your audience, you know, like where you can and can't.
Yeah.
But using fully accepted terms in like our premise when you're in a fantasy setting, just kind of like it's confusing.
Yeah.
So when you say stuff like that, it's like this is not something that I would associate with the Star Wars universe. This is something I'd associate with someone I wouldn't want to hang around in the first place.
Yeah.
Like just the way she's acting and the fact that she's asking that question is like, oh, I'd appreciate it if we didn't talk anymore.
Well, they make her act like an adult, and I can't stand that. It's like, why would you coach a kid actor and tell them to act like an adult? You just make them really unlikable.
Right.
And
if
then
you're gonna
she's
have a kid. Make him act like a kid.
Yeah. And then she's mean to the main character. She treats him like garbage. It's like, screw this. I don't like this character. You know, and it's like she's part of the main cast. She's part of the skeleton crew. So it's like you're supposed to like her. And it's like, you're making us not like her.
Yeah, by the end of the first episode, you feel just the same as when she's introduced. And you're like, I don't like this one. I don't like it at all. The main character seems okay.
Wim. Say his name.
His name is Wim. W-I-M. Which, here's the thing. That's a stupid name. It's a stupid name.
At first, I was thinking wimp, and then you're like, it was like on a whim. And I was like, so now how you slice it? They're just not giving this kid a chance.
Now I hate this name. Like, yeah.
And you got to talk about this dad, because he's responsible. He picked the name. I mean, the mom's not around. She died. So
we don't know if she was involved
in
naming him.
He's the only. He could have changed it. She's not around anymore.
Changed it. She won't know.
If it was that bad, you take your kid into the office and you say, "Hey, we got to change his name.
Give me that paper back."
She didn't know what she was thinking, so I'm holding him personally responsible for this name.
Dad, jerk. Why would you name your kid Wim? Just name him Sue at that point. So I don't know what jokes I'm allowed to make.
When you said it, it lined up. It lined up perfectly. You were like, this is like the stereotypical like 90s white dad. That's what he was like.
But there's something wrong with that picture is that
he's not white.
Here's what cracked me up.
And he's got the glasses and everything.
Big old
big glasses.
He looks like Urkel came out.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I was dying. So the thing that cracked me up so much, because every time he talked, he was just very like overly enunciated.
Yes.
And he reminded me of Dave Chappelle making fun of white people. Like that voice that he used.
Yeah.
So I was just cracking up the whole time. I couldn't take it seriously just because it was so inauthentic sounding.
Right.
Every time he's like, well, Wim, you need to do your homework. And I was like, who talks like this? And so it was so funny. And then Wim disappears when he's supposed to be studying. And so the dad goes out looking for him. He's like, Wim, where are you?
Come home.
Come home, Wim. You're supposed to study for your test tomorrow. I convinced them that you need to take it and pass. Wim, please. It was, oh man, I was dying.
I have to go back to work now, Wim.
Yeah. And that was the thing. He's such a jerk too, because the kid's like, can you read me a story like Mom used to? He's like, I have to work, Wim. And then he just walks out of the room. I was like, good God, you just be like, could give him like 2 minutes to read a story.
Like, I said thank you. Come on.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, Wim, not tonight. I would, but I don't love you anymore. It was just, oh my gosh, it was so, oh.
You left the garage open.
Again.
Now I have to call the exterminator, Wim, for the second time this month. Oh, boy.
Oh, my gosh.
I was dying. I was laughing so hard.
But that was the only thing that,
This is like, he's not exaggerating. You're doing his voice
it was
almost verbatim.
It was just like that, too.
And his dialogue is all, we're just repeating actual lines.
Yeah, those are real lines.
Like 90% of that was all actual things that he
I
said in
had
the
to
show.
leave work for your detention. I had to convince them to let you take this test again. Otherwise, you will fail. I am very disappointed, Wim. It was just...
I hope you're studying, Wim.
I hope you're happy. Oh, my gosh. And the reason we're stuck on this for so long... It's the most entertaining part of the show, was just making fun of this guy.
Yeah,
he was didn't feel like authentic at all.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen him in something else, and he wasn't bad. So it's just the script. It's like every time he had to say something, I was like, "Who wrote this?"
Because he doesn't have any moments that make you connect with him or like him at all.
Yeah,
he's just a jerk dad.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so after you've been introduced to all these characters, you find out that they live in a universe that's not very interesting at all. It just kind of looks like a futuristic version of our own. It has these weird little characters and creatures that just honestly not that great to look at all.
Yeah, I mean, the droids look okay. But I will say this, actually, the droids, and then I'll throw it back to you. But when the droid was teaching them, and it's like,
yeah,
it just kind of made me feel really good.
Like what you think a robot would talk like. It's like teaching history. Well, and 18 takes 2. It's like there's like nothing. It's like, man, I would die in this class. I was just like, oh my gosh.
And like, half the kids look interested. I was like, who?
Right? Yeah. None of these kids would be interested in this. This is a death sentence to children.
But it made me feel really affirmed, because I was like, my job's not in trouble.
You'll always be an interesting teacher, Mitch. But
I'm in no danger of being replaced anytime soon.
I got a bunch of years. So,
good grief.
Aside from all that, you finally get to the plot. So, in the very beginning, it has this series of really horribly written, in the classic Star Wars format, well, close. So Disney did this thing where anything affiliated with Star Wars had to resemble it, but not follow the formula. So Star Wars itself, I mean, that's most of their Star Wars content in the first place, it
needs to look like it, but not act like it.
Right.
Okay?
Because someday someone's going to make sure that it's no longer canon. So
this is a visual medium. You understand?
Exactly.
So just replicate the visuals.
Right.
A lightsaber, a blaster, starships. Just represent those things. A guy in a mask.
There you go.
There you go.
Boom.
Done.
That's all you need.
Easy.
So in the beginning of their, I call them spin-off series, let's call them. So like Rogue One, and then these TV shows, Solo, they have this opening that says similar, right? Because you have the opening crawl for the original films.
Yeah.
Well, it's the first 6, I guess, and then the prequels that don't exist. They have the opening crawls, and that's very specifically done. It's very stylistic, and it is like, that is Star Wars, right? Yeah. And then these spin-off things, they have text, but it doesn't like do the scrolling thing. Okay. So this one has like 3 or 4 sentences of text. Yeah. It's all very uninteresting, uninspired. It just says something about pirates and the fact that they're part of the New Republic or some garbage.
Wait, no, the pirates are not. They're attacking they're stealing from the New
Right,
Republic.
but the New Republic has opened up this opportunity for these pirates to be active,
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
So in the beginning, you see Jude Law's character who gets them on a ship, and they're going to steal all these credits, and then there's no credits in there, so it's implied that they mutiny. But you obviously know it's Jude Law, so he's going to live, and whatever happens, he's going to be this like outcast pirate or whatever. I don't care.
He's wearing this helmet that
Looks like a mushroom.
Well, it almost has like a. It's like, was it 2 points in the back and one in the front? So it's reminiscent of, I forget the name of the hat, but that like triangular shaped hat in like late 1700s.
So they're trying to make a pirate's hat out of a helmet. Is that what their goal was?
Yeah, I think so.
That's retarded. Okay.
Well, that's kind of what it reminded me of, and I was like, oh, they're probably going for like an imperialistic message as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop it. So they have that scene, and then they introduce the kids.
Well, actually, that comment is important because if this is a show for kids, then why do you have that here? Why is that necessary? To have like political messaging. You know what I'm saying?
Disney can't help themselves.
Anyways, go on.
So then they introduce the kids. Nothing interesting happens until the main kid falls onto a hatch in this ditch.
Mm-hmm.
He's late for school, so he has to take a shortcut. It's all real generic, contrived.
Yeah.
It's not very interesting at all.
It's all Spielberg wannabe looking.
Yeah. If Spielberg was a failure. So and then the kids, they all show up at the same hatch in order to open it. They open it, go inside, find out the starship, and the starship takes them to space. So clearly this starship belonged to a pirate, and it's going to take them to a treasure stash of some kind.
Yeah.
This is the first episode. They didn't give me a whole bunch, but I know that's what's happening.
Yeah. And this all happened from one button press, by the way. One button.
So they open it up. The little like Geordie looking chick, she goes and turns on the ship, and then it turns on this button that starts flashing, and this kid who's not supposed to touch anything obviously touches something. It happens to be that one button that turns on the whole ship, lifts it into the air, and shoots it into hyperspace. And I was like,
actual hyperspace, like gets him out into space and then into hyperspace.
Autopilot's like, all right, let's go. And I was like, wow, you didn't need to push any other buttons for this. Like, I get it. It's a kid show. It's supposed to be like, this is what kicks you into action or whatever. But it was just like, man, are you serious? This is the best you guys can come up with? Man, this is horrible. So needless to say, I hate the show already. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I have had some serious problems with Disney. Just in general, their TV show format has been nothing less than awful. Andor is one that I actually enjoy to an extent, and even that, it's not as Star Wars-esque as I'd like it to be, because it's not like space fantasy, space opera.
Yeah.
It's much more like intrigue, much more like World War II-esque.
Yeah, or like Godfather in space. Almost.
However, it is really well written. So it has a pass to some extent, and it looks good as well, special effects and stuff. When it comes to most of the other stuff, like, I despise Mandalorian. I think it's a garbage show. I think it started as a garbage show. And
you don't like Mando and all his walking?
It's awful. It's a horrible show.
How much he walks, though.
Dave Filoni is a hack, and he needs to be fired. This skeleton crew, I think, is just... It's this weird, like, well, let's try something different. And they did this different thing, and it's like, guys, what are you doing? Star Wars is such a big universe with plenty of opportunity to make all kinds of fun stuff. And this is it's just stupid. Like, this feels like it should have been a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah.
And that's it. You like put that on Disney Plus. Don't make it a big Star Wars property. Sure, put the Star Wars name on it just for interest. But like, this should be something you don't put a lot of effort, don't put a lot of budget in, don't put a lot of thought. Because they clearly didn't anyway. It's so stupid, and it's so irritating, because it's like, guys, what is wrong with you? Why can you not make one good, competent property? The sequels sucked. Like I said, most of the shows sucked. The two spin-off films, like Rogue One, is competent, and that's about it. Like, it is not a stellar performance.
Yeah.
Solo is a horrible, horrible movie. It's awful. And then this show, like, bad. I don't even know how long this episode is. It's probably like 40 minutes. We got to like the 20-minute mark, and we're like, dear God, when is this going to be over? Please say it soon. It sucked. So all that to say, like,
But again, the reason why it sucks so much is because of our interest level. Because like it's just passably forgettable entertainment otherwise.
Sure.
But because I'm looking at it going, and I imagine you're in this camp with me, it's like, okay, you have the Star Wars property. What kind of stories do you want to tell? Oh, I don't know. We could do one about like the forming of the Jedi Order. That could be cool.
Sure.
We could talk about the clones and how like they got started and created. That might be interesting. How did I got one? How did Jabba come into power?
That's cool. Make a gangster show out of that, I guess. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, there's so many things about Star Wars that you could explore, and I'm the one who thinks that the range is actually not that vast because Star Wars has this real problem, and it's always had this, where it likes to like dig its heels into like rebels fighting the larger force,
Sure.
and that's not interesting. Nobody cares about that.
It had its time in the sun. Move on.
If it was just that, Star Wars would have failed.
Yeah.
It would not be, or I mean, maybe it would have succeeded, but it would not have been the massive property that it is today. It succeeded because of the Jedi and the family ties that Luke had with Vader. So that's the main thing. So like I want to see Jedi stuff and Sith stuff. That's all I care about in the Star Wars world. And if you're going to do the family drama stuff, the soap opera thing, I'm down for that too because that's in line with the Star Wars property. So those are the two things Star Wars is allowed to talk about. And you could do the other things, but just know it's like you're subpar and you're subtracting from like the core essence every time you do that.
Yeah.
And this is partly why I don't like, I mean, the prequels aren't very good, but like, we all know that. That's just like common knowledge.
Right.
But there are some things about the prequels that are kind of interesting. And it's like there are almost these movies that are like you kind of have to see them at some point and then talk about them. You're going to have something to say.
Well, the way I've always described them is they're great ideas poorly executed.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And that's the thing. There's enough there to give you enough substance to retain your interest.
Yeah. And the reason why they oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm saying it has enough in there. It's too much. One could argue because he just kind of crams it all in. But like the political intrigue, like there's clearly a lot of great substance there. And it's just mixed with the bad. And then he's trying to be revolutionary with special effects and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of dilutes it at some point. But I mean, it's a good bit. Like it's like, oh, at least it was his to ruin or to mess up on or whatever.
And like he still makes an effort to tell like the fall of Anakin.
And he does. It's like coherently there. Like the storyline is still there, right?
You get what he's trying to tell you,
right?
Too well, most often than not.
Sure.
But yeah, so like it's still agreed. Like it's still there. Like you don't really get to know enough about the Jedi. He spends too much time explaining like the Senate and the world, and it's like that's not as important.
Sure.
I like it because I like to learn more about it. Yeah, because that was the other thing too. Like the characters in this show, he's like. Who was it? They're just like, oh, like I hate this place. I'm in this like sucky planet. And I was like, what? You're living the dream.
It's a great
There
planet.
are people who are slaves on Tatooine.
Right.
Like actual slavery is happening right now in the Star Wars world. And you think you have it rough? You're living in a nicer house than I live in. You're living in a super nice, super, super nice suburban neighborhood. And it's clean. It's
there's something to be
neighborly
said
and friendly.
There's something to be said about the call to adventure, right? The like wanderlust.
Yeah, but you see how you can't say it now. It's like because you put it in the world that already exists, and I'm looking at that world going, yeah, slaves, evil empires, gangsters. There's rough stuff out in this universe.
That's why New Hope worked, is because Luke was in those situations.
Yeah.
So he wanted to escape a bad situation.
Right.
And I understand making them younger. Kids are inherently going to want to be, like, the grass is always greener on the other side, right? Even if you're in a good situation, you don't recognize that. You just want adventure. So, like, I understand that.
From the kids' perspective, but not from the audience's.
Yeah, but like you said, it could be construed as a kid's show at some point.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't hold inherent interest for... Like, Stranger Things did a great job of having both sides.
Yeah.
Right? It pulled in adults well enough, and it pulled in kids, just because it had enough for both without necessarily having to cater to either one.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, let's tickle their imagination and keep them home. Like it was a good way, a good format of appeasing that wanderlust and like having
Yeah.
this kid-like wonder with an adult situation.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it just seems like it's so geared towards a childlike
Yeah.
audience that it almost just removes all the substance altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to compare this one specifically to what I'd prefer in Star Wars because, like, I would prefer something a lot darker, just in
Yeah, of
general.
course.
Like, if I were to make the perfect Star Wars show, I'd be like, well, how did the Sith get formed? I
Yeah.
want to see that. That's all I care about. I want to see like a break off from the Jedi Order and then
Yeah,
this
that would be
new
cool.
ideology, so that then you can clarify those lines that have been so unclear.
Do
for
like
so long.
Riven's backstory and stuff.
Or Revan's back for sure. And the main problem I've had was with most of these Star Wars properties that they all kind of center around this narrative, this point in time, and they never extend out of it. It's always
Yeah.
around this like 20 years in the few, and the few that they've tried outside of that, like the Acolyte, it was just like, guys, I didn't even grace that with watching it. And I know
Yeah,
that
it looked really bad.
like I try to be fairly unbiased with this, and I thought it was pretty fair with the previous Star Wars episode that we did for the sequels.
Oh, those were just horrible movies.
They're horrible movies, but we did evaluate them on a I thought pretty fair,
Yeah.
objective standard. This one is it was just ridiculous. Like I could not believe how stupid the show is.
Well, that's the important thing too. Like when you're evaluating something, because this is a kids show now.
Right.
I think we've made that perfectly clear, and that's exactly what they're communicating: is that this is for kids. But even in that, there's just, and like that's not what we prefer. But like you said with Stranger Things, it's like you can't appease both, and when you don't,
Star
it's
Wars
just
was for
irritating.
kids. A New
Star
Hope
Wars
was for kids.
Right. A New Hope was already attractive and
Yep.
interesting for kids, but it also had a lot for adults too. Like it was an easy story for everyone to get on board with.
Yep.
And this ain't that. And it's I guess it's really disheartening too, because it's just so unnecessary. And I don't really like it when people counter with like, well, it's just for kids. I'm like, why is it just for kids? That makes no sense to me.
Well,
the only difference should be the amount of like the severity of mature content. That's what separates it. And then the other thing is if the subject matter is just not going to be very interesting particularly for kids. Like if you have like a political drama, like that movie Conclave that came out recently.
Yeah.
That's not a movie kids are going to enjoy. Even though I think it's PG. They could see it, but they're just not going to like it because it's just a lot of adults talking about serious political things.
Sure.
So it's just not that compelling to them. So like, Star Wars, the original, was like a way to bridge that gap. It's like, well, it's got these like grandeur ideas for the adults, but it's told in a way that's pretty exciting for kids and has lots of new, interesting things to keep them stimulated and interested throughout. It's got a big, scary villain, interesting characters,
lightsabers.
Lightsabers, a straightforward storyline. So like that's how you appeal to kids. And it really just boggles my mind how everyone's just like, oh, well, that's for kids, that's for you. Maybe it's just because it was me. Like as a kid, I didn't like a lot of kid content. I mean, I very quickly grew out of it because it just frustrated me. It felt like it was treating me like I was dumber. And I was like, I'm not that dumb. Like I know what you're trying to do.
That's what I think this show feels like. Is like it's treating you like an idiot.
Yeah. Well, no, just not that you're an idiot, like you can't keep up, but more like it's just like what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's not obtrusive. It just doesn't poke any, it doesn't
It's
like
not stimulating.
Yeah, well, it's just plays everything safe. It's just safe from beginning to
Too
end.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And the main point, I guess, is that you've attached the name Star Wars to it. And that holds some connotation. And it was like they completely ignored that. And they're like, well, yeah, but it's like the Goonies that happens in the Star Wars universe. It's like, just make a Goonies knockoff at that point. Like, just make a sci-fi Goonies.
Yeah.
It would have been just as effective if you've done that, and probably less insulting to a Star Wars audience.
Yeah, it's like, why do you want the baggage of the Star Wars label on it?
Right.
I don't understand this.
Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense. I couldn't make sense of that as, like, from beginning to end. It just seemed like this was totally unnecessary. You're just trying to draw in a Star Wars crowd. And the Star Wars crowd,
Doesn't want this.
granted, is an audience with their head in the clouds all the time. Like we're a group of dreamers. Like we're just like I lived that way my whole life, and I would argue that I'm still that way. Like it's just I like fantasy more than reality, and that's
But this is the antithesis of that. It brings you into reality.
right. It tries to mix the two in this weird way, and it's just I thought it was just very off-putting on multiple levels, by the way,
So
CGI included.
yeah, so if you remove the Star Wars title from it, that's gone. How would you feel about the show? Would you?
I'd still say it sucked.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like pick something better. Like I
think I would just say it's just not for me, and it would be easier to dismiss because it'd be like, whatever. This is just some kid's sci-fi show.
Yeah,
I guess it gets kids interested in science fiction, which is cool, in space. But
I
that's
guess.
about it.
I just feel like I'm not a fan of the Goonies, but I feel like the Goonies is better, even though I don't like that movie. Stranger Things is better. E.T. is better. Super 8's better, and these are all things with the same format. It just doesn't seem like this was an unnecessary pairing. It's almost there's like one of those pairings that you're like, nah, this doesn't work together, and they should have acknowledged that before they made it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. It didn't work. I didn't like this pairing at all.
I am the kind of person who likes to pair normally things that don't work together and put them together.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of effort to demand that they collaborate.
Well, you have to find the ones that have the chemistry in order to it could be
Well,
just
for
a
one,
main
they're all-
ingredient. Yeah.
Yeah, because for one, they're all my own ideas. Like,
too,
so it's not built within another universe. So I set the standard for what is and isn't okay
You just
in
pick
this
themes
universe.
or motifs or something. Yeah.
Right. I'm just picking. So, I mean, I guess not to like make it about me, but I'm just kind of thinking like it's a little bit like how Philip K. Dick, like in all of his stories, it's just like people are like wearing plastic shorts and stuff like that. And you're like, why are people wearing that? And it's just because it's part of like how he envisioned the world that everything was just going to be plastic at some point and there would be just trash everywhere. He had a weird obsession with trash and garbage. So like that just shows up in his writing all over the place. And I kind of do this similarly. And, I'd like to think decent writers they do it that way too. And this wasn't that. This was just like, I'm just going to cram them and just, oh, it's Star Wars. And like,
Right.
he's talking on and on. He's just like, wow, it's Jedi Temple and Jedis are so cool. And I want to be a Jedi. And I'm like, how do you even know anything about them? Because they've been extinct for a long time. And then you had one small resurgence who took out the Emperor. Is this public knowledge now? I guess it is. And like, would you be taught it in schools? Because they act like it's, I don't know, it was weird. They were just like, are you going to serve the New Republic? And they were acting like emperor people or like empire people where they're just like, we control everything now. And like, you're not going to do something in your life to help people. What's wrong with you? You're going to be an accountant. And it was like, why don't you use the droids for that?
Right.
Well, this makes no sense.
Yeah. Why would any human take that job? Like, stop having the robots teach because they're terrible at the teaching. Make them do the boring stuff so no one has to experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
jeez, what kind of backwards reality is this? And they're like saying that stuff, and he's just like, well, I want to be a Jedi, and I'm like, so did you learn this in history class? Do they teach this now? They bring it back, and like, that's kind of a weird niche subject. That'd be like if you went to, your kids go to public school, and then they come back and they're talking all about like Buddhism. And like Buddhist temples and China, but like Chinese Buddhism, not like populist Buddhism, just like dedicated, hardcore, like long-term history. Like your kid comes home and they're telling you all about Odyssey to Odyssey to the West or whatever. Famous Chinese novel. I'm butchering the name now.
Okay.
Who's read that? You read it when you study literature.
Well, if I'm interpreting this correctly, is that this is New Republic, so it's post Luke Skywalker killing, the
Emperor
Vader and the Emperor. So I would assume that some stories of their exploits had come about because the Empire was, universal essentially.
Yeah.
So I'd assume that most people would be aware of the exploits of Luke Skywalker and what he is to some extent. And it depends on how far into the New Republic they are, because he may have already started the Jedi Temple. But we don't know any of that. We just know that this kid is aspiring to go to a Jedi Temple and to be a Jedi. It's like, well, that's not horrible. We don't know why. Like, you don't know what all is going on in this world to make him want to be a Jedi.
He wants to be like a fictitious thing in his own universe.
Right. I mean, and that's one of the lines that, like, the Jedi have been extinct for thousands of years or whatever. It's just, anyway, I mean, I don't have a problem with him aspiring to be a Jedi. What I have a problem with is I don't understand why. It doesn't seem like this is a regular part of the universe from what I saw of the show. What I saw of the show was a futuristic suburbia in which robots mow the lawns and he goes to public school and wants to go on an adventure. I was like, why is this interesting? Why did anyone think that this would be interesting? And like the contrived way to get them on the adventure too was also like,
yeah, we ripped you out so we could put you back in.
Right. I was like, why'd you rip me out in the first place? Just put me in Star Wars. We're in Star Wars.
We're
Just put me
there. You have the technology. You can do it. I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, Two Thumbs Way Down. It sucked. Don't watch it. Do I have to watch more, or am I free? Or is that spoiler territory?
We'll leave it there. Thank you for joining.